Welcome to St. John's 2-Year Bible Reading Program. Father Dominic invites you to explore the entire Bible through daily readings from both the Old and New Testaments. Each session concludes with a reflective question and with a reflective reply provided at the beginning of the next day's reading. Enjoy the journey, and may God bless you.
In 2 Kings chapter 11, how does Jehoshaph's courage inspire us when facing our challenges? In 2 Kings chapter 11, Jehoshaph's remarkable courage is evident as she hides her nephew Joash from Queen Athaliah, who is determined to eliminate all potential heirs to the throne. Her bold decision to act in such a dangerous political climate serves as a powerful example of the strength of bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. Jehoshaph's actions, which significantly impacted the future of the kingdom, remind us that standing up for what is right often means risking personal safety and comfort. In our own lives, we may encounter situations where we must protect the vulnerable. Jehoshaph's example inspires us to be vigilant, act decisively, and nurture hope in seemingly hopeless circumstances. Her faith and determination remind us that even one person can make a significant difference, encouraging us to find our inner strength and courage when faced with challenges. It's a reminder that our actions can have a significant impact, no matter how small. What does Jesus' advice to the guests at the Pharisees' house teach us about humility? In the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 14, verses 1 through 14, Jesus' advice to the guests at the Pharisees' house highlights the importance of humility and the dangers of seeking status. By instructing them to take the lowest seats, he teaches that true honor comes from serving others rather than elevating oneself. This humility reflects a heart aligned with God's values, where the first are last and the last are first. Jesus underscores that our worth is not defined by social status or recognition, but by our willingness to serve. By choosing humility, we foster genuine relationships and create space for others to shine. Furthermore, he emphasizes that inviting those who cannot repay us, like the poor and marginalized, reflects God's love and grace. Serving others not only reflects our humility, but also brings a unique joy that makes us feel fulfilled and content. Ultimately, Jesus' teaching encourages us to cultivate a humble spirit, reminding us that humility leads to proper exaltation and fulfillment in God's kingdom. Day 198, a reading from the second book of Kings, chapters 12 and 13. Joash was 7 years old when he became king. In the 7th year of Jehoiada, Joash became king, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah from Beersheba. Joash did what was right in the Lord's sight as long as he lived, because Jehoiada the priest guided him. Though the high places did not disappear, the people continued to sacrifice and to burn incense on the high places. Joash said to the priests, "All the funds for sacred purposes that are brought to the house of the Lord, the census tax, personal redemption money, and all funds that are freely brought to the house of the Lord, the priests may take for themselves, each from his own vendor. However, they must make whatever repairs on the temple may prove necessary." Nevertheless, as late as the 23rd year of the reign of King Joash, the priests had not made needed repairs on the temple. Accordingly, King Joash summoned the priest Jehoiada and the other priests. He asked, "Why do you not repair the temple? You must no longer take funds from your vendors, but you shall turn them over for the repairs." So the priests agreed that they would neither take funds from the people nor make the repairs on the temple. Jehoiada the priest then took a chest, bored a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar on the right as one entered the house of the Lord. The priests who kept the doors would put into it all the silver that was brought to the house of the Lord. When they noticed that there was a large amount of silver in the chest, the royal scribe would come up with the high priest, and they would gather up and weigh all the silver that was in the house of the Lord. The amount thus realized they turned over to the workers assigned to the house of the Lord. They, in turn, would pay it to the carpenters and builders working in the house of the Lord, and to the masons and stone cutters, and for the purchase of wood and hewn stone used in repairing the breaches, and for any other expenses that were necessary to repair the house of the Lord. None of the valuables brought to the house of the Lord were used there to make silver basins, snuffers, bowls, trumpets, or any gold or silver article. Instead, they were given to the workers, and with them they repaired the house of the Lord. Moreover, no reckoning was asked of those who provided with the funds to give to the workers, because they held positions of trust. The funds from reparation offerings and from purification offerings, however, were not brought to the house of the Lord. They belonged to the priests. Then Hazael, king of Aram, came up and attacked Gath. When he had taken it, Hazael resolved to go on to attack Jerusalem. Joash, king of Judah, took all the sacrificed offerings presented by his forebears, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, kings of Judah, as well as his own, and all the gold there was in the treasuries of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and sent them to King Hazael of Aram, who then turned away from Jerusalem. The rest of the acts of Joash, with all that he did, are recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah. Certain of his officials entered into a conspiracy and struck Joash down at Beth Millo. Josachar, son of Shemith, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, were the officials who struck and killed him. He was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, and his son Amaziah succeeded him as king. In the 23rd year of Joash, son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoaz, son of Jehu, became king over Israel in Samaria for 17 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He did not depart from following the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. The Lord was angry with Israel, and for a long time gave them into the power of Hazael, king of Aram, and of Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael. Then Jehoaz entreated the Lord, who heard him, since he saw the oppression to which the king of Aram had subjected Israel. So the Lord gave Israel a Savior, and the Israelites, freed from the power of Aram, dwelt in their own tents as formerly. Nevertheless, they did not desist from the sins the house of Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit, but persisted in them. The Asherah remained even in Samaria. No army was left to Jehoaz except 50 horses with 10 chariots and 10,000 foot soldiers, since the king of Aram had destroyed them and trampled them like dust. The rest of the acts of Jehoaz, with all he did and his valor, are recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Jehoaz rested with his ancestors. He was buried in Samaria, and his son Joash succeeded him as king. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, Joash, son of Jehoaz, became king over Israel in Samaria 16 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He did not desist from any of the sins Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit, but persisted in them. The rest of the acts of Joash, with all that he did and his valor, and how he fought with Amaziah, king of Judah, are recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Joash rested with his ancestors. Then Jeroboam sat on his throne. Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. When Elisha was suffering from the sickness of which he was to die, Joash, king of Israel, went down to weep over him. my father, he exclaimed, Israel's chariot and steeds. Elisha said to him, Take bows and arrows. and he took bows and arrows. Elisha said to the king of Israel, "Rest your hand on the bow," and he rested his hand on it. Elisha placed his hands over the king's hand and said, "Open the window toward the east." He opened it. Elisha said, "Shoot," and he shot. He said, "An arrow of victory for the Lord, an arrow of victory over Aram. You will beat Aram at Aphek and finish him." Then he said to the king of Israel, "Take the arrows," which he did. Elisha said to the king of Israel, "Beat the ground." He beat the ground 3 times and stopped. The man of God became angry with him and said, "You should have beat 5 or 6 times. You would have beaten Aram and finished him. Now you will beat Aram only 3 times. And so Elisha died and was buried. At that time of year, bands of Moabites used to raid the land. Once some people were burying a man when suddenly they saw such a raiding band. So they cast the man into the grave of Elisha, and everyone went off. But when the man came in contact with the bones of Elisha, he came back to life and got to his feet. King Hazael of Aram oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious with Israel and looked on them with compassion because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was unwilling to destroy them or to cast them out from his presence, even up to now. So when King Hazael of Aram died and his son Ben-Hadad succeeded him as king, Joash, son of Jehoahaz, took back from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the cities Hazael had taken in battle from Jehoahaz his father. 3 times Joash beat him, and thus recovered the cities of Israel. In 2 Kings chapter 12, what does the story of Joash teach us about the consequences of betraying trust? Day 198, a reading from the Holy Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. One of the fellow guests, on hearing this, said to him, "Blessed is the one who will dine in the kingdom of God." He replied to him, "A man gave a great dinner to which he invited many. When the time for the dinner came, he dispatched his servant to say to those invited, 'Come, everything is now ready.' But one by one they all began to excuse themselves. The first said to him, 'I have purchased a field and must go to examine it. I ask you, consider me excused.' And another said, 'I have purchased 5 yoke of oxen and am on my way to evaluate them. I ask you, consider me excused.' And another said, 'I have just married a woman, and therefore I cannot come.' The servant went and reported this to his master. Then the master of the house, in a rage, commanded his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town, and bring in here the poor and the crippled, the blind and the lame.' The servant reported, 'Sir, your orders have been carried out, and still there is room.' The master then ordered the servant, 'Go out to the highways and hedgerows, and make people come in, that my home may be filled. For I tell you, none of those men who were invited will taste my dinner.'" What does the parable of the great banquet reveal about God's invitation and human responses?